Good afternoon, good evening, good morning for some of you. Thank you for joining Track A. My name is Simon. I'm a partner with McKinsey in our Southeast Asia office. And thank you for making the time to listen to me talk a little bit about how analytics is brought from pilot to scale in consumer goods companies. So maybe a little bit about myself, so you know who you're listening to. I've been with McKinsey since 2007, and for McKinsey, I lead our consumer digital and analytics work across Asia Pacific. And I'm very much a hobbyist, enthusiastic machine learning, advanced analytics person. So on the right hand side, you see a little bit of my somewhat older work in trying to figure out what paintings belong to which artist in that hang in the Dutch Rijksmuseum. So as one of my first forays into neural networks. But I spent a lot of time during my paid job helping our clients figure out how they use and unlock the power of analytics in their day-to-day business. And for those of you that don't know, McKinsey that I joined 15 years ago was very different than it is today. And I think a quote from The Economist from a few years ago does a nice job at describing the evolution that McKinsey has undergone, right? So they basically said the McKinsey of AI may yet be McKinsey itself. McKinsey's invested a lot of time and effort into building a new capability that allows us to help our clients scale the impact of advanced analytics, artificial intelligence in their day-to-day decision making. And the thing that gets in the way of realizing that power of artificial intelligence is not because of a lack of ambition, right? The vast majority of companies have very high aspirations. So when we look at and survey companies and work with our clients and ask them, do you believe that the power of digital analytics, artificial intelligence is there and you should have a high aspiration on it? More than 90% of them say, yes, I'd like to be the industry leader or enable top quartile performance, and or my business model will be redefined as a result of this. And they rightfully do that, right? They rightfully have a high ambition on this. Because if you look at companies that do well on analytics, so on the left-hand side, you see the leaders versus the laggards, right? And we measure that through a proprietary survey. We see a 1.6 times total return to shareholders, right? So companies that do well in analytics and digital, artificial intelligence, do get the results from that. And on the right-hand side, you see how that evolves over time. You see that that gap is growing, right? So consumer companies with a high maturity tend to also have a higher total return to shareholders, right? So they rightfully set a high ambition on using artificial intelligence and analytics. And many cases have proven to be useful, right? So on this page, you see a couple of the domains, numbers 1 through 7, that our clients have started to or have already implemented at scale. So from the front to the middle to the back, cases like sales analytics and merchandising, right? So how do I enable my sales force to better sell to my customers? How do I understand that an outlet, say a warung in Indonesia that is in a certain location is very different from that same warung had it been in another location, right? So how do I truly understand what the potential is of my customers? To things like marketing analytics and personalization around loyalty, around hyper marketing, to the middle, right? So anything that has to do with plan, make, source, deliver, as well as the human capital end of things, right? And it has real impact, right? And these things are proven. But, right, and that's why the title of the conversation today is about from pilot to scale. despite these lofty ambitions, many of our clients are getting stuck. If we ask them, is digital analytics, artificial intelligence a part of your organization's culture? Is your organization structure optimized for it? Are you using insights to make decisions? Is a larger part of your operating profits touched by digital analytics? Only less than 20% say yes, that is true, right? So we're still very far from actually reaching scale, right? Or our clients are still very, very far from reaching scale. And that is because, and I've asked quite a few of my clients this, this is one of the quotes that resonated with me the most. One of our clients said, I have more pilots than Lufthansa. There are so many things that we're trying as an organization, but we fail to scale them, right? So I have more pilots than Lufthansa basically means I have many, many different small things that I cannot scale. So it's not that clients and organizations don't know where to start. They typically have a good sense of where to start. They really struggle to capture the impact at scale by being unable to get and scale up their experiments, their pilots, and embed that really in the day-to-day decision-making that they all do in their business. And why do they struggle? Right? So I said less than 20% of CPG here means consumer packaged good players, but typically 20% of companies are struggling to get to scale. Now we've looked at this and we've classified this in roughly 10 different pitfalls that get in the way of companies getting to scale. So at the top, you see some of the hard bits, right? The things that you can point at or almost touch. So flexible architecture, people that have siloed data, legacy systems, monolithic applications rather than a service architecture. Security and privacy, sophistication plays a role. A lot of trouble harmonizing data, right? And building a data production pipeline. Everyone has this Excel sheet that changes layout every other time, and you can't actually get that to be consistent. It's not feeding into your model properly, etc., etc. Then there's the analytics, where people don't have an integrated view on what type of analytics, when to use which type of analytics. There's no roadmap. And then the design bit, right? So one of the most important things is a pilot you can always make work, right? But to truly get people to make different decisions, you have to think customer or user back, right? What is it that the customer needs to make a decision? You can build fantastic recommendation algorithms, but if your sales force in the field can't use them, right? What's the use of having this fantastic recommendation model? Now, at the bottom, you see some of the softer things, right? Organization, unclear who is actually in charge of this. Is this the digital organization? Do you have a chief analytics officer, a COO, a CIO, or a CTO? Replace the middle letter, right, of the CXO, and it's unclear who does what. Then there's the talent bit, right? So people have gotten a good sense of the fact that they need new talent, but they're not spending the time to build the capabilities of the folks in-house. Right? And when they attract the talent, they don't always know what to do with it. There's several of my clients that have recruited and paid a lot of money for top data scientists to then have them build Power BI dashboards. Right? This is for that talent to then leave after a couple of months. Similarly, with the agile ways of working, we've seen lots of people try and build fantastic data lakes and spend $15–20 million on building data lakes, to then realize that half of that data is practically useless in their decision making because it's not predictive, or it has zero value to making the decisions, and they spend a lot of time doing that, right? Whereas we much more believe in a little bit of rather than have a rocket that you build for 3 years and you launch, We believe a bit more in the snowball or the agile model, right? Where you start with something small and over time you make that bigger. There's some questions around funding and the portfolio, right? So some of these things don't have a business case by itself. So you need to look at them in the larger picture. But organizations have a difficulty committing to an unproven ROI. And last but not least, although many clients have started or many players have started to do this, the prioritization of where to spend our time and efforts is not yet aligned with the leadership of the business. Right? So you'll have someone in procurement do something, you'll have somebody in sales doing something, the marketing team has their own data scientist. But because the resources are scarce, the budget is limited, there's no prioritization. And again, lots of different things happen, not at scale. If we then look at the leaders versus the laggards, right, which dimensions matter most? Right? So we've looked at hundreds of companies that exist in our database. And it's actually not the hard bits, right? The tangible bits around security and privacy per se, right? It's also not that data typically gets in the way, although it does to a certain degree. It typically has to do with a couple of the softer things, right? So are you clear on agile ways of working? How do you actually take a use case from pilot? And how do I already prepare it in the pilot phase to scale? How do I embed this into decision making? How do I do all of the change management components, right? How do I think about incentives, about storytelling, about capability building, and how do I embed that already early on in the process? How do I think about talent and recruiting them? What's my employer value proposition? But also the organization. Is the organization clear on what is expected? Who owns what part of this entire transformation? So when you think about where things may go wrong, right? And there's probably a couple of you that for which different pieces of what I just shared resonated, right? And that's why I think it's not just an analytics question. It's not just a data question. It's much broader than that. If you want to unleash the power of analytics and artificial intelligence, you need to think beyond just the data and the models, right? So you think about how do I actually sequence a transformation to build my flexible architecture over time? How do I start getting the right data, not all the data, but the right data to make a version 1 and then a version 2 and a version 3 of what I'm building? How do I align the business on where to go first, to go second, and to go third, right? What is the most impactful use case or domain that I can start delivering against? But also, how do I track this talent and how do I retain them? Do I understand what they do? Do I understand what they need? This is very scarce talent that companies are paying a lot for. And then how do I bring to life these agile ways of working, right? How do I know what's different between a business case, a proof of concept, a pilot, and then an actual implementation at scale, and all of the change management components that come into play? There's lots more on this. I'll keep it short. I think I'm at the end of my 50-minute talk. So let me just end with this thing. Many people have a roadmap, a 3-year roadmap, a 4-year roadmap, a 5-year roadmap. I don't think that that's the right way to approach this, right? Yes, you need to think ahead, but you need to get started, right? You need to get started with a clear strategy, a clear portfolio of use cases that you want to do first. Then you have to design and recruit your organization, and then you need to get going, right? This is not a linear thing. This has many loops and many iterations to recruit more talent, change your organization structure, build your modern architecture, make sure that you apply and learn from your models and make them better over time, right? And then every 6 months, revisit your prioritization. Are what we're doing still the most valuable things? So it's not just a 5-year or 3-year roadmap. It's getting started and being willing and able to change as you're doing this, with many different wonderful agile loops in the intro. Let me just pause it there. Maybe a quick summary. struggling to get to pilot from pilot to scale. The problem is not just data, not just analytics. It's a lot in the software elements, and it's not a linear journey. It takes many iterations to get this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for your presentation. A very interesting topic, and I think it's very useful for the audience. I can see we have some questions from the audience. The first question is, for a traditional company, is it better to transform the whole company or to build a new business unit that fully leverages the advanced analytics, and why?
I fundamentally believe that artificial intelligence, AI, advanced analytics, whatever you do, has the most value in making decisions in your current business, right? So I'm not talking about completely separate business models, completely separate businesses, which I think requires potentially a separate unit. But if I want my sales force to do a better job, if I want my key account managers to do a better job, if I want my operations people to do a better job, I will need to help them. So I fundamentally believe that this is a existing company transformation, and you cannot just put a small unit outside of the company and expect them to change the culture of the mothership.
Right. Thank you for the answer, and I hope that answered the question from the audience. We have a next question. So this is a question from Frayos. So in order to reach scale with advanced analytic project, how critical is it to leverage enterprise cloud platforms such as AWS, Azure, GCP,
Sorry, I missed you. How critical is what?
How critical is it to leverage enterprise cloud platform? So it's basically how critical is it to use cloud platform to do large-scale advanced analytic project?
I think it's more of a cost-benefit analysis that you can do. I see most, if not all, of our clients use cloud infrastructure. Right? The reason being that on-premise infrastructure is typically more expensive in the short term. It doesn't have all of the capabilities that, say, a GCP or an AWS or an Azure has, right? So if I think about pipelines, if I think about data storage, if I think about security, if I think about almost like drag and drop machine learning flows, if I think about ML ops, right, monitoring models, all of that, if you had to recreate all of that infrastructure, hardware and software on your on-premise cloud, not sure you'll quickly catch up, right? So I do believe that working with one of those three, and I think there's more than those three as well, is something that you should definitely consider.
Fully agree. And I think that is the end of our presentation for this. And thank you so much, Simon, for once again for your time. And now I would like to invite our next speaker, Vice President of Data Science at Gojek, Syafri Bahar. Syafri, over to you.